I smile to myself with that term near-death experience because for me it was a fully alive experience. I'd had a motorcycle accident and which led to a very severe infection, and just with all of that chaos of being very sick and having a fever for 2 weeks, etc., there were treatments. And so one day I was in the emergency room. They were about to do another procedure on some skin, and I found myself suddenly up at the ceiling looking down at myself. My first thought was, gosh, you're much bigger than I thought. You really should go on a diet. And then my second thought was looking at my friend who was there thinking, well, this is going to be too much. I mean, this is what happens when you die. How's he going to cope with, arrangements, phoning family, having bodies shipped and things like that. So all that went through my mind. And then I found myself back in my body again, very quickly as I was out, and then I was back in again. And then I heard an inner voice that said, if you grip, because I noticed that my hands were gripping tightly on the bed sheets, if you hold on, it will be worse. So I just relaxed and I let go. And I recognized this voice. I'd heard this voice before, many years previously, when I'd been involved in an armed robbery. When I had a gun to my head, I heard the same voice, same quality of voice, the same accent. I could call it the voice of God if you want. And so I recognized that voice and said, okay, well then I'll let go. And so then I found myself out of my body again and looking down at the room, and I became aware of So there's some difficulty here. And the difficulty is I've got to find words in the English language that give an idea of what it was like. And so I will first start by saying that I'm going to describe a leaf to you in order to describe a forest. I'm taking one leaf and explaining what that leaf is and what it does and how it feels to me, when the reality is it's an entire forest. And so it's only an approximation. And I will use words that are not true, meaning words that will indicate time or movement or realization, when in reality it was all there. And so I do want to paraphrase that I'm constructing a memory out of an experience in order to make it more convenient for others to grasp what I'm talking about. And indeed, to enable me, the day-to-day person who still rides a motorbike, goes shopping, buys flip-flops, gets up in the morning, does work, feeds his dog, etc. That person who does all that stuff, who relates to people in a very normal way in the world, explaining to that part of me what happened. Because there are no words, and in reality there are no thoughts. There are experiences, there are deep realizations, but they're not sequential thought-like realizations. Just to make that clear. Mm-hmm. And so my version of, oh, it was like this, is just how I'm putting that together for you and for anyone who wishes to listen to this. And so there I was out of my body again for the second time, and I look up. Of course, I don't turn my body to look up because I'm not actually in my body, but so I'm going to use those terms. And so now I've explained all that. So I look up and I'm aware of this vast black space and a very, very thin golden line, like the breadth of a hair. A very thin line, but very bright. An extremely bright golden line. And this black space. And I was very curious about the black space, because I'd read about near-death experiences. I'd read about them, and I thought, well, isn't there supposed to be a tunnel and some light? But I wasn't troubled by that. I didn't think, oh my goodness, I'm now going to hell. Because as I observed the black space, I noticed that it was pulsating. It was alive. And it was benevolent. And here's the most curious thing. There was a black light within it. I can't explain that. Because it would seem that black and light are two opposites. Maybe it was a very, very deep purple, I don't know. But there was this pulsation of energy that I could see. And part of the difficulty is that whilst I was in the experience, I could see and experience colors that are way beyond the spectrum that my physical eyes can experience. So when I say to you, and there was a black light, hey, it's the only reference point that my brain has, because there are no words or descriptions for the colors and the things that I felt, because they haven't been within the realm of my physical experience, if that makes sense to you. And so, as I looked at it, I knew instinctively that if I passed through this golden ring, that would be it. I would be in a different world, a different universe, the land of the dead. And there was a part of me that was questioning it whilst it was happening, because of all of the other stories and images that I'd heard of near-death experiences. I'm sort of thinking, well, where are my aunts and uncles? Where are my grandparents? Where are all these ancestors? Where are the spirit guides waiting to meet me? None of that was going on. And so I started to pass through that hole. And so my head and shoulders passed through, and I looked down at my feet, and obviously I'm in my spirit body, and I said to myself, well, if my feet pass through, that's it, I'm through. I'm not just poking my head into a different aspect of consciousness or universe. That's it, I'm gone. And as I got more than halfway through, I then came to peace with, well, then maybe my friend has got to organize the shipment of my body or my burial there in Thailand or something like that. And I was able to let go of all of that. I was then somewhere else. And then I passed through. And the only thing that I can say about that is that I gasped. And of course, not literally. There was a flooding, an absolute flooding of my consciousness, of my awareness, of union with something that was vast, that was inclusive, that was everything that was, is, and could possibly be known. So for want of a more convenient word, I could call that God. Although there wasn't an elderly gentleman with a long beard sitting on a throne saying, hi, I'm God, you're here with me now. There were no choirs of angels, there were no saints, there were no prophets, there were no gurus, there was nothing to indicate heaven, but there was this merging with this vast awareness. And I would call it awareness. I wasn't aware of another individual. So God was not an I, another I that I'd just merged with. It wasn't like I'd merged with you as an individual or another individual. It was merging with and becoming part of something that was everything, that in fact I was already a part of, but just simply became aware of it. And so with that first experience, with that first gasp of the flooding of my awareness, it was like all the neural pathways in my brain were suddenly flooded with this golden light, although I wasn't in my body. But it was an experience of something happening in my mind that was very electrifying, like electricity. And pleasurable, very, very pleasurable. And then I looked down and I suddenly couldn't see the hospital room, and I could see the earth, this beautiful blue place. And I suddenly saw myself looking at a blade of grass. And then I had this experience of every single blade of grass on the planet simultaneously. I could feel them all, and I could know them all. What was I want to say astounding, but mind-blowing. I could come up with all these words to say, wow, you know. But in reality, it wasn't astounding, it was so natural. It's only coming back into my body and wanting to explain it to people that it sounds so astounding. In the moment, it was, well, there wasn't even a question there. I wasn't even saying, well, why not be connected to every blade of grass on the planet at the same time? There wasn't that in that moment. And so the astoundedness or the amazement at it or the wow about it or the big charge around it didn't exist in the moment. But it's in the integration of the experience of, oh my goodness. So it felt very natural to me. Then I became aware of something else, and it's an experience that I've had before, but never on this scale, where I became aware that each blade of grass had a unique note, a sound, a unique note, like the note on a piano, but each one had a unique tone, and that to this vast awareness that I was then merged with, each of the notes, each blade of grass was then known. And so having this experience, if you like, to call that great awareness God, and if we call then the tone, the unique tone, the unique vibration of each blade of grass, if we call that a name, then the name of every blade of grass was known to me in that instant. And every blade of grass in existence that had ever existed and will exist. That is a vast experience, and it continued on to many other things, many other things.